Hey, what's going on, everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech. And today we're going to be talking about $20 Boros human soldiers in Pioneer. I'm very excited to bring this list to you. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? Is there any card that I didn't include? And there was a lot of good cards I was not able to include in this list. So definitely let me know if you think I should have been playing any of those cards. So, all right. A little bit of backstory on the deck. So I have gone through a ton of different renditions of this list. There's a ton of different cards that I had in and then took out, cards that really didn't synergize as well as I hoped they did. And ultimately, this was the best deck I would say that I could have built, especially for $20. For $20, this is a very, very strong deck. Even if it was a non-budget deck, it would look very, very similar, which is always a plus. So I wanted to include human soldiers because originally I had it as just a regular soldier deck and I was playing like Dried Militant, but a lot of the good soldiers are also humans, so then you should kind of play a human synergy with it. So there's definitely a lot of very, very cool soldiers I did not include in this deck, but they're really, really good humans. So you're going to see a lot of cards that see play in like the regular humans decks in Pioneer, but definitely some very, very cool cards that don't see a lot of play, which is very, very cool. And there's also a couple spicy additions from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan for those who are still kind of brewing with that set overall. So let's go and hop into the list here. So our 1-drops, we're playing 4 Recruitment Officer, 4 Soldier of the Pantheon, and 4 Warden of the Sky. Recruitment Officer, obviously a staple in human decks, and it's also a soldier. It's very, very powerful. Soldier of the Pantheon, you know, I don't want to say outdated for the most part, but not generally the best per se human you could be playing in a human deck, but it's a soldier, which is very, very important, and it's a 2/1, so that's why we are playing 4 Soldier of the Pantheon. Then we're also playing 4 Warden of the Inner Sky, newcomer from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I'm a huge fan of this card. Generally, for me, the 1/2s for 1, I'm not the biggest fan of. I highly prefer the 2/1s, but this is very, very good. We can tap 3 untapped artifacts and our creatures, put a 1/1 counter on it, and scry 1, which is pretty sweet. So any creatures that we're not attacking with, we can just tap them, make our Warden of the Sky a little bit bigger, and then obviously if it has 3 or more 1/1 counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance, and guess what? There's going to be other ways we're going to be able to put +1/+1 counters on this, which obviously will make sense in just a moment here. But these are the strong 1-drops that I considered. It'll make more sense once we get into the video here. I originally had Monastery Swiftspear in this list, but when I ultimately I realized it wasn't a soldier. That was pretty much the main reason. But again, it'll make sense here in just a second. So, all right, those are our good 1-drops here. So these are our strong 2-drops, pretty much our lords. We're playing 4 Copper Coat Vanguard. You know, it's just a classic staple for human decks. Now, it gives other humans 1/0 and Ward 1 extremely powerful. Then we're also playing 4 Thalia's Lieutenant. It's actually like the most expensive card in the deck, but it's very, very strong. Thalia's Lieutenant obviously put a 1/1 counter on each other human, and then it has the Champion of the Parish text, where whenever another human enters, it gets a 1/1 counter. Then we're also playing 4 Rally the Ranks, 2-mana enchantment. When it enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So originally, instead of Rally the Ranks, I was playing the Lord from Dominator United that works with soldiers. It gives other soldiers 1/1 and then has an activated ability. I didn't play that ultimately because it's a core soldier. It is not a human soldier, so it doesn't work with Copper Coat Vanguard or Thalia's Lieutenant, but I wanted another Lord effect, so I ultimately decided to just play the Rally the Ranks. I still really do like this card. It's also extremely cheap, so if you don't have copies of these, I highly suggest picking them up at some point. All right, so those are our strong 2-drops, but you know, we haven't seen any red cards yet. It's a Boros deck, right? So let's go and hop to some of our red cards here. We're playing 4 Anim Pakal 1000th Moon. This card is incredible. I can't believe how under the radar this card flew. I did not think this card was going to be that strong, and it's really good. Whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, so it itself doesn't have to attack, put a +1/+1 counter on Anim Pakal, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. So it itself doesn't have to attack. We just attack with creatures, we get gnomes. It gets more 1/1 counters, we create even more gnomes. We play Thalia's Lieutenant. We can play Thalia's Lieutenant, give it a 1/1 counter, then it gets an additional counter when it attacks and gets even more gnomes. This card is absolutely incredible. I love Anim Pakal, and it's a human soldier. That was also part of the reason I went Boros and ended up going the soldier way with it, is because it's a human soldier. Why not? And then the other reason I wanted to build this deck, and this was actually the main reason I built the entire deck, we're playing 4 Heroic Reinforcements, 2 red-white sorcery, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1, and gain haste. So we just play a couple humans for the most part, you know, we can go like one drop, you know, one drop, two drop, three drop, whatever. And then we play heroic reinforcements, trigger all of our dudes, and we just swing in for a ton of damage. And then obviously we're playing Rally the Ranks, so that way it also counts as well. And we're a soldier deck, so we have like Rally the Ranks, for instance, which helps buff our soldiers in addition to that. So I'm definitely just a big fan of Heroic Reinforcements. The card is just sweet. It was really, really cool when it was in Standard. It was a really good top end for the Boros aggro decks, and this card is just very, very good. So I'm definitely a big fan of Heroic Reinforcements, and it's only 25 cents, which is pretty sweet. And our last slide here for our main board. We are playing 4 Lightning Helix. Yes, Lightning Helix. So, a little bit of a disclaimer. If you're watching this video right when it comes out, Lightning Helix has not been released yet, but if you're watching this in the very near future, then obviously Lightning Helix is finally in Pioneer from Murders at Karlov Manor. We're going to be playing 4 Lightning Helix. This card is absolutely incredible. 2 mana, instant, deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. You hit creatures, planeswalkers, players, whatever. Lightning Helix is incredible. We're also playing 3 Conclave Tribunal. So I wanted an exile, like removal spell effect in this deck, and I ultimately decided that Conclave Tribunal was the best one, mostly because of it's only 25 cents at least for US dollars, and on top of that, it's just really good. 3 and a white with Convoke, and then it's basically an Oblivion Ring effect, which is very, very strong. So definitely a big fan of Conclave Tribunal. For those who have been watching the video closely, you can kind of tell when I used to play Standard, because there's a ton of cards from like the Guilds of Ravnica Standard in this deck. So that Standard was fantastic. And then we also have a lot of spicy Ravnica cards on here, which is pretty cool. So that's our entire main board, except for our lands, which it's really, really easy. We're going to go over those real quick. We're playing 4 Fury Calm Snarl. It is essentially the best dual land, or budget dual land in the format that can enter untapped. Obviously, you just have to reveal a mountain or a plains for it to be untapped, but, you know, you don't have one or you don't need the mana, you just play a tap, which is still fine. Then we're playing 4 Restless Bivouac. I had to look up how to say this. Bivouac. I always thought it was Biovac, but it's Bivouac. Bivouac. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce this. Anyways, it's a fantastic manland. Enters tapped, then 1 red white, becomes a 2/2 red and white ox, and then whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, which obviously works very well with Anim Pakal, which is kind of a cool little synergy right there. So definitely a big fan of that. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 10 plains and 3 mountains. We don't want a lot of mountains because we don't have a ton of red cards in the deck, but we still want to play just a couple of those. And then as the spicy basic land of the day, I know I featured these before on the channel. These are the very, very cool Boros lands from the Boros Guild kit. I'm definitely a huge fan of this art in general, and then I like the little the watermark it's got for the Boros symbol there. Definitely very, very cool to be featuring those. So if you ever see those at your LGS, I highly suggest picking those up. So all right, don't go anywhere though. We still have to talk about our sideboard as well as some budget options. So sideboarding for our $20 deck is very, very simple. We're going to want some Graveyard Hate. Tormod Script is the best option for our sideboard just because it's really cheap. It's 0 mana. We don't have to devote any mana into doing anything. We just play it and then exile our opponent's graveyard, which is pretty sweet. We're also going to want some extra removal and interaction. I would say cards like Rip Apart or Abrade is definitely the best options in terms of extra removal. You know, obviously if you're playing a non-budget deck, you could also play cards like Rending Volley, but Lithomantic Barrage is also fantastic. Then we're going to want cards like Damping Sphere and Weathered Runestone just because they're very disruptive for our opponent. Damping Sphere obviously good against like the Lotus Field combo decks, and I nick those shenanigans. Weathered Runestone's good against a number of different decks. Any deck that's trying to cheat in permanence, you know, like Collected Company or Storm the Festival, that kind of thing, Weathered Runestone is perfect for that. And we're also playing a Gigantha. We get to play Gigantha in the deck because guess what? I threw the deck together and I realized, oh wait, I can play Gigantha. So that's why we are playing it. You're not going to cast it very often, but it's a known fact that every time you say before a game that you're not going to cast it, you're going to end up putting it in your hand and casting it. It's just kind of a known fact anyways. All right, so last thing we have to talk about is our upgrade options, which honestly, there's not a ton of upgrades for this deck in terms of the number of cards. Really, the main thing is upgrading the dual lands and the utility lands. The best dual lands, obviously, is like Inspiring Vantage, Sacred Foundry. Utility lands being cards like Aganjo, Sekenzin, and Cavern of Souls is great. Mutavault, if you happen to have some of those laying around. That's what I would upgrade the lands with. Obviously, Adeline is fantastic. Essentially, having Adeline and Anim Pakal, they're very, very similar cards for the most part. If you happen to have some Adelines, I highly suggest putting those in. I'd probably take out the Heroic Reinforcements if you have some Adelines, although I really, really do like heroic reinforcements in the deck. It's just a really, really sweet card. And then the last thing I wanted to include is Boros soldiers you could definitely upgrade, you know, as much as you'd like to, or Boros humans, whatever. But you could also play blue-white soldiers if you're very interested in having a very specific soldier build. The blue-white soldier build goes a lot more in playing actual soldiers and not just like humans that are also soldiers. So that way you can play cards like Dryad Militant, for instance, or you could also just play humans. If you want to go all in on the humans version, you know, you can just play like mono white or really any color humans for the most part. That's what's great about humans in Pioneer. You can play a ton of different combinations and all of them will be cool. Each color pie essentially has different reasons, and at least for Boros, the main reason is kind of Anim Bakal for the most part. That's the main reason to be playing that. Real quick before we hop into the ending, the exit part of the video, I wanted to include, I know people are going to say something about it. Yes, I did not play Thalia Garden of Thraben in the list. I know it is a fantastic soldier. It's probably one of the best in the entire game, but because we were doing Lightning Helix, Conclave Tribunal, Heroic Reinforcement shenanigans, I did not include it in the list. Like I said, there is so many good humans and soldiers I did not include in this deck, just mostly because of budgetary reasons, but also because it just didn't quite fit the deck. I just wanted to include that as well before we hop into the exit here. So, well, that takes us to the end of the video. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? Is there a card that I forgot to include on here? Just let me know in the comment section below. I always am reading the comment section, so don't be, don't feel like your comment's not going to be heard. I always view all of them. And I didn't include this at the beginning, but if there's any suggestions that you have for upcoming videos, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Actually, the next deck that'll be coming out here was a viewer submission pretty much. So if you have any decks that you'd like to see featured on the channel of any format, just put them in the comment section below. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.